Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. As I call this meeting to order, if you would please take out your cell phones, turn those on vibrate or off. We would all do the same thing up here, and we greatly appreciate that. And now, if you would join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Now, if you'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, we are going to move to staff questions in our agenda. Board members, does anyone have questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, we will now move into public comments, requests, or presentations. And I do have two proclamations this evening. The first proclamation, let me see. Anyone from Public Works here this evening? No? Stephen, want to come up? Thank you, Stephen. Whereas Public Works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and service that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Huntersville. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of Public Works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Huntersville to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2023 marks the 63rd Annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Melinda Bales, Mayor of the Town of Huntersville, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim May the 21st through the 27th of 2023 as National Public Works Week in Huntersville and urge all citizens to join with representatives from the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. So, Stephen. And I have to say, if you're driving around Huntersville and somebody turns a sign that asks you to stop and sit and wait for a minute, I would encourage you to say thank you. Thank all of those folks who are out there every day, day in and day out, making sure that as our community grows, that we have the infrastructure to meet the needs of our growing community. Chief, would you mind coming up here? I have another proclamation, and then you can just stick around up here for a minute. Whereas every day across the town of Huntersville, police officers bravely and courageously risk their well-being to protect and serve our community and preserve the peace and order to which every citizen is entitled. And whereas May 15th through the 21st of 2023 has been designated as National Police Week to honor the police officers who put their lives on the line to keep our communities safe. And whereas the Huntersville Police Department consists of 105 full-time sworn police officers and 22 law enforcement support staff, the police department is responsible for 24-hour community-wide law enforcement and responds to all requests for emergency services. The police department responds to an estimated 65,000 calls for service per year. And whereas the members of the Huntersville Police Department are dedicated to ensuring public safety and enhancing the quality of life in the town of Huntersville by serving as leaders and mentors, educating the community about the importance of public safety. And whereas we appreciate the extraordinary efforts and sacrifices made by officers and their family members daily to protect our schools, workplaces, roadways, and homes. Now, therefore, I, Melinda Bales, Mayor of the town of Huntersville, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim May 15th through the 21st of 2023 as National Police Week in the town of Huntersville. And on behalf of the Town Board of Commissioners, do hereby honor and thank all of the police officers in the town of Huntersville during this week and beyond, and commend those officers for their willingness and dedication to protect and serve our community. Thank you. You got something else. Now, I would like to invite Crime Stoppers on up to the podium here, and there is a presentation for Chief Hoyle.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'd like to ask some of the board members that are here today from Crime Stoppers who've been working with the chief for a long period of time. I'm Dave Rochester. I'm the chairman of the North Mecklenburg Crime Stopper chapter. We work with the three departments, police departments in the towns of Huntersville and Davidson and Cornelius. And we have had the privilege of receiving Chief Hoyle's guidance and mentoring for the past 20 years or so, both as chief in Cornelius and here in Huntersville. That's on a business basis. On a personal basis, we have seen his family grow from very small children to adults, and he is now a proud grandpa, and Melanie's in the back room is a proud grandma who I understand is going to retire in a week or so. So this is a double retirement for the Hoyle family. So it would take all night to, if we covered all the deadly serious stuff that Crime Stoppers and the police departments do. So we're not going to go into that. There are also a lot of humorous events and things that have happened in the last 20 years, as you can imagine. But we will just be honored to present the chief with this plaque representing our thanks and good wishes for the future in his retirement. So, Chief.
Thank you. We are now going to public comments, and we have a couple of folks who have signed up to speak. And I believe this is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is Brad Rankins? Reekers? Okay. No worries. Yes, please, come right on up. As you come, you have 3 minutes, and if you'll state your name and address for the record.
All right. Brad Reekers. I live at 9312 Stawell Drive in Huntersville. I'm here, I saw you at the HOA meeting about the Gilead Road widening project, and just kind of I have these papers too. You guys can, I don't know if you can pass them down that way. That's my parcel and how the Gilead Road project directly affects my parcel, and that's all that I'm going to be speaking to. not arguing that it's necessary. We all know that. But how it affects my property specifically is what I want to talk to you about. What it recently has changed, so 40 feet into my property is now going to be a permanent slope easement, meaning changing the topography of my backyard. And from where my ground level is to up to the road level is about 15 to 16 feet. And 40 feet, it's going to go up to that point. And so it's a 21 to 23 degree slope. And being in Charlotte, you guys know Charlotte Motor Speedway, the turns are 24 degrees. And so just as a perspective, and so that is going to be the back slope of my property. And so this is drastically going to change the topography. I should have started saying I'm a father of 5 children. I have 2 sets of twins, 6 and 3, and also 2 years old. So this is drastically going to affect quality of life of my family. Having in a fenced yard, I can show you pictures of my backyard. I have those as well. But that is drastically going to affect the quality of life and the resale value if I ever want to sell, or the ability to sell. We've already had 2 houses go up in the market, and they're already being hard to sell in our neighborhood because of the Gilead Road widening project. And that's not directly affecting them. It's affecting mine and then the 2 neighbors associated here. The people right next to us, even our right neighbor, the permanent slope easement that's going to be changed is touching the back of their house. So either that house is going to have to be condemned or bought out by the city, because it is literally touching the back. So you're putting a slope that touches the back of their house, runoff, everything, not in their backyard, but in their house. So what I'm asking, and I don't know if this is like a possibility for a conversation, but one of 2 options of pushing it to the other side. There's wetlands on the other side. That was the pushback of, hey, we can't do it that way. Well, you're going over wetlands on our side of the road too. Or building a retaining wall to make sure that I can maintain the integrity of my backyard and not have $100,000 of damage that if I want to go sell my house, I don't have a backyard. And so especially with housing prices going up, it's like this is directly affecting not only our family and the length of the project, and them renting the property from me. If the project goes longer, do I get compensated more? And because it's essentially renting from the project. So raising those concerns that this is directly affecting our neighborhood drastically.
Thank you. Your time is up. I would say, I would encourage you to reach out to staff. With engineering, Mr. Trott, you may want to have a conversation with him, if you wouldn't mind, and we can go from there. Okay? Thank you. The next person who has signed up to speak is Marianne Truetsky. As you come, you have 3 minutes, and if you'll state your name and address for the record.
My name is Marianne Turetsky. I live at 16977 Bridgeton Lane, Huntersville. I was just wondering when the freedom of speech was taken away from Huntersville residents. 2 people so far have been picked out of the 5,000 who oppose the Laguna project. The threat is you speak against Jake Polillo and you get sued. The joke is you get sued for damages suffered to his reputation. He's the one that calls people morons, idiots, and old boomers. He really has ruined his own reputation. It's unbelievable to many how he was appointed to the 2 boards with his ragey type mentality. This seems so lopsided to many. What does the board think about his tactics? I think you should all think about that.
Thank you. No one else has signed up to speak this evening. We'll now move to agenda changes. Are there any agenda changes this evening? Yes, sir.
I would like to move item 8F as in Frank for the consent agenda to item 10J as in Jersey, other business.
Okay. Is there a motion? Oh, so he doesn't. Yes. So we will go ahead and move that to 10J. Is there any other changes to the agenda?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to move item 10F as in Frank from other business to item 10A and other business, please.
All right. Any discussion around that change to around other business? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
There's a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the agenda has now been adopted. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
And there is a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? We will now move on to other business. We will now move to public hearings. Item 9A, this is to conduct a public hearing on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2024. Mr. Roberts, no one has signed up to speak, but I will turn it over to you. Oh, we'll let Patty do it, okay.
She did it anyway, her and Jackie, right? I'm just standing here. So at our last meeting, excuse me, we did the manager's recommended budget. The PowerPoint presentation that you see tonight, very similar, not a lot of changes. We do have a workshop coming up next Tuesday, I think at 4 o'clock. I'm sure we'll get into much more discussion. I'm sure some of these numbers on my sheet will change after those discussions, but this is pretty similar to what you've seen on the manager's recommended budget. The major change that I would say is the first bullet point, not a lot of funds when you're looking at a $111 million budget, but due to a $38,000 reduction, I'm going to be rounding numbers instead of reading numbers wholly. A $38,000 change in the bottom number or the bottom bullet point is with the League of Municipalities, we will pull that out and treat that like an external agency. We have the mayor's obviously on the board of directors, so we will pull that item out and we'll vote on the external agencies either second meeting in June, maybe the first meeting in July, just depending on when we adopt the budget. And we'll treat that as a separate budget amendment if we decide to fund that, just like Ada Jenkins, just like a Rural Hill, et cetera. So I'm not going to read through these numbers. You've seen these many times. But the total annual funds for this budget is roughly $111 million. Reevaluation, well, we just went through a reval. Total assessed value is roughly $15 billion. The reval net of appeals, the average increase is roughly 42%. That's residential, commercial, all averaged out. What does 1 penny generate? Roughly $1.5 million. Before the reval was roughly $1 million. The property tax, as you know, during a reval year, the manager is supposed to tell you what a revenue neutral rate would be. The revenue neutral rate is 17.6 cents. You heard this before. The manager's still recommending a 19-cent tax rate, which is roughly 8% increase. I think it's 7.95, something like that. On a valued home at $300,000, that's roughly $89 annually impact. But if you have a vehicle and you have a used vehicle, when you get taxed based on the tax rate, so if you had 24 cents and it went to 19 or 17.6, and the likelihood of that value of that vehicle went down, the used vehicle probably didn't go up unless you did some major improvements to it, which I haven't seen a used vehicle typically go up in value due to jacking it up or putting big tires on it, et cetera. From a general fund revenue changes, the highest three revenue sources are property tax, sales tax, and utility sales tax, roughly 72%. As far as the solid waste fee, we're increasing that by $18, which brings that to $144 annually. No fee changes to vehicle fee or stormwater fees. From a personnel expenditures, 5 new positions, the same 5 positions you saw before. We're getting into maintaining our fleet, doing oil changes, tire rotations, not changing motors, et cetera. Looking at a park maintenance position, risk manager, and also another stormwater inspector in the land development department. As far as the personnel expenditures on a COLA merit, we're looking at 8% COLA, which is based off the 22 Consumer Price Index, and a 2% merit. Operating expenditures, this slide is pretty much the same. From fire department, we're looking at a $2 increase of part-time hourly salaries, which is roughly $570,000. We are not, in this budget, proposing to add any firemen at this time. It's not budgeted for full-time firemen. We're doing a study on that. Jackie, our deputy manager, and also the chief, and a team of his staff and our staff are working together to come back to the board to come back with a presentation. We got to work through the policies, et cetera. And there may be a budget amendment later on in the fiscal year, could be January-ish timeframe. So you'll see that third bullet point talks about possible budget amendment later on in the year as we come back to the board and tell you how that's laid out and how we move forward with that. But the board would have to vote on that. Solid waste, we are moving forward with a new contract. I know staff is working on that now. I anticipate that possibly coming back to you at the next meeting. If not, June, it'll be sometime either first meeting in June, second meeting in June, with a new contract, with additional costs associated with that, new households, et cetera. Roughly $700,000. Various increases to police dispatch. We have a police dispatch agreement that will be coming back to you. Right now, we anticipate that increase at $550,000. However, in conversation with the Charlotte City Manager, I think we'll be able to slightly increase that number for next year, but the following year, we will get the full 550 or more thousand. So we have to look at other options. Don't know what those other options are yet. I know the major, soon to be chief, is working on that, and we will look at options that we'd have to bring back to the board to consider for future years. But for next year, we will renew, or this year, I'm sorry, for another year, we'll renew with CMPD for that dispatch. And I don't anticipate it being $550,000 based on my conversation with the city manager. But I do not have the exact number on that yet, but a lot less than that based on our conversation. Some other things in this budget are some of the downtown plan. We adopted a downtown plan, some of the items per that downtown plan that we're looking to move forward in this budget. Various debt expenditures. Obviously, we are looking at a new town hall right behind this building and upfitting this building, making it a community center. It's roughly a $30 million project. The reason you see 1.5 in there, that's for one debt service payment. By the time that debt service payment rolls around, we'd only see one. Typically, you see two at 1.5 each, but in this budget, we'll only be hit for 1.5 million, one actual payment. As far as the bond, we're talking about that later, but we are anticipating, if the board moves forward with that tonight, to move that forward down the path, that in November, and I'll save the dollar amounts until we have a conversation later, but hopefully November 2023, the citizen will consider a bond package to vote on, and if that gets approved, then we'll be looking at debt payments in FY25, not in FY24. That's why you don't see any payments. One, hasn't gone to the citizens. Two, they may not approve it, so that's yet to be determined. A little bit different on this slide, a couple things combined, the general and transportation reserve capital combined here. Multiple items here, I won't go through all of them, but you've got charging stations to new police vehicles, to some park upfits in the various parks, to some maintenance equipment, to greenway improvements, to various sidewalks, a big Huntington Green sidewalk, various road infrastructure improvements from Beatties Ford to Hambright, Beatties Ford, Gilead intersection, and continue to finish the Main Street project and several other projects on here. All this stuff is online, 200-plus page budget document. Read the manager's message, which is about 8 or 9 pages. Other funds, we'll talk about real quick. You've seen this before, tourism fund. Not a whole lot of changes there except for one capital projects falling off. That's why the expenditure is down 18%. Commerce Station, continue to fund the Commerce Park down off of 115, right in front of Lake Norman Charter School. We have multiple large businesses there. We'll continue to fund that park and look at other contributions and what we can do to expand our economic development in Huntersville. Power bill funds, we'll continue to use power bill funds to pave streets in town. There's a small decrease in the budget there, $775,000. That's capital related. Land development, recommended fee changes, which you saw I think Stephen Trott had brought that before us before, that we're looking to change some of our tiers there, and only one actual line item will be above Mecklenburg County fee level. You'll see here in a minute a slide you hadn't seen before as part of the budget presentation, but with the statute changes, you need to make sure you see that, we present that to meet the regulations associated with the fee changes. That's this slide, land development fee changes. This is what our fee changes on the left column, I guess, is what the current fees are, and then when the board adopted, the new fees will be on the right-hand side, and this would take effect August 1st. Mr. Trott went over these fees, what the changes were, how we differ from Mecklenburg County. As I said earlier, only one of those are higher than Mecklenburg County, the rest of them are lower. Enterprise funds, I think we've had these split out before, but the two enterprise funds, electric and the aquatic center, HFFA. From the electric side of things, there are two, I think we'll talk about this maybe a little bit later. There are some rate increases. The rate increases is just to the industrial customer, not to the residential commercial customers. So there's no real change there except for just to the industrial customer. HFFA increase in their budget. Hopefully we'll start to see membership continue to increase. As far as the capital side, roughly $110,000 on the capital side that we'll be spending HFFA for gas pool heater / boiler and pool lighting. If you recall, we did the HVAC large replacement. It's in this fiscal year that we're currently in, doing that replacement. And as far as next steps and notes, the ARPA funds, we received two different pots of ARPA funds, roughly $4.8 million state and the $12 million that we received. And the same thing that we did with the 4.8, the 12 million we're supplanting with government salaries so that we can meet the deadlines. But all it does is frees that up to do more capital projects, allows you more flexibility. Budget workshop, May 23rd, I talked about here at Town Hall, 4 p.m. Budget document, 200 plus pages. Just focus on the manager's message is what I would read, unless you are super happy about reading budget documents or you're bored to death. And then this is posted on our website, and we look to hopefully adopt the budget June 5th. I know I went very fast. This is all online. You're going to hear a lot of this probably again on Tuesday, and then hopefully we'll vote June 5th. Be a lot of opportunities for questions as we move forward. Public hopefully will speak up, let you know how they feel, what they like, dislike, etc. I'll be quiet. I think I'm done, Mayor.
Any questions at this time? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. We'll close that public hearing. And we will now move to item 9B. And this is a public hearing on petition Annex 23-03, the Whitby Bowman property. Mr. Farber? No, you are not Mr. Farber. Mr. Semino.
Standing in for Mr. Farber today. Enter the staff report and the associated attachments into the record. Brownlee subdivision. So this is 54 acres off Asbury Chapel Road. It's 54 single-family lots on 34 acres on Asbury Chapel Road. As it says in the staff report, all the statutory requirements for annexation have been met, and we are happy to answer any questions. This is a contiguous annexation, so it is adjacent to existing town limits.
Any questions for Mr. Semino? Commissioner Munger.
Yes, Mr. Semino, why wasn't there a public neighborhood meeting on this particular annexation?
Neighborhood meetings are required for any rezoning request or subdivision request, but neighborhood meetings are not required for annexations.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will close this public hearing. Thank you. Mr. Semino. We are now going to move to item 10A under other business, which is consider adopting resolution to approve the awarding of a service firearm to a retiring law enforcement member. Mr. Roberts.
Chief out there, he may have left on me. I don't know. There he is. Is that him? Maybe he left. I mean, he's already got his gun, so, I mean, I don't have one to give him. I was going to just tell him. He's out. He took off on me? I mean, he's known me for 16, 17 years, and I said, Chief, we're moving it up, and he probably thought me moving him out, but no, he actually, typically on that, he has his firearm on his side. Always says, hey, Chief, you've got your firearm, you get to keep your firearm, and you owe me $1. That's basically the statutes say, but, I have nothing but good things to say about the chief. I worked with him for 15 to 16 years in multiple different towns, and he's done everything I've asked him to do. Great guy. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I have to say, Chief Hoyle started here in Huntersville, and he came home to Huntersville. And we truly have been blessed to have him as our chief the last several years. So I hate that he's not here, that he's already had to leave, but this is a good thing we're doing today. So Commissioner Boone, do you have a motion for us?
No, I just have a comment to make. The person who hired Chief Hoyle is in the room right now, Sarah McCauley. That's a good hire. Thank you.
You have the motion, Commissioner Partee.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to approve the awarding of a service firearm to the retiring law enforcement member.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Kidwell. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed? That motion carries. We will now move to item 10B, and this is to conduct a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I bounced. I did. I got ahead of myself. We are moving to consider decision on petition Annex 23-03, a request by Whitby Bowman LLC to annex 34.082 acres into the town of Huntersville. Mr. Semino.
Enter the staff report into the record. You closed the public hearing, the same report as I mentioned previously.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Commissioner Partee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Motion to approve annexation Brownlee subdivision into the town of Huntersville, 34.082 acres consisting of one parcel.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Kidwell. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries. We will now conduct a quasi-judicial evidentiary hearing and consider decision on petition Special Use Permit 23-01, a request by HEP Petra Development LLC on behalf of the City of Charlotte for a special use permit for a major solar energy facility at 5824 Jim Kidd Road, Huntersville. Ms. Spate? Yes. I'm getting there. I have to pull out my, all of my paperwork here. All right. All right, here we are. This hearing is a quasi-judicial hearing on the application submitted for petition SUP 23-01. Quasi-judicial hearings are evidentiary in nature. Only parties with standing, including the applicant, property owner, local government, and individuals who can show they will suffer special damages, have the right to participate fully in the hearing. Special damages must be particularized, separate, and distinct from damages to the public at large. Special damages are a fact-specific inquiry. While proximity may bear weight in the determination of special damages, proximity in and of itself is insufficient to grant standing. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Other individuals may, but are not required to be, allowed to speak as a witness. However, they will not be allowed to participate fully as a party, such as by questioning other witnesses or by calling other persons to testify. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. General witness testimony is limited to facts, not personal preferences or opinions. Certain topics require expert witnesses, including projections about impacts on property values and traffic impacts. Individuals providing expert opinion testimony must be qualified as experts and provide the factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. Mere conclusory testimony lacking the foundation of the expert's opinion is insufficient to establish the existence or non-existence of a fact or conclusion. The board must base quasi-judicial decisions upon competent, material, and substantial evidence in the record. Competent evidence is evidence that is sufficiently trustworthy and reliable, and that is legally fit and acceptable for consideration by the board. Speculative, irrelevant, or vague evidence, non-expert opinions as to something that requires an expert, and non-accepted hearsay evidence will likely not be competent evidence. Material evidence is evidence that shows that the standards will or will not be met. Evidence is substantial if it is relevant and regarded by a reasonable person as sufficient to support specific conclusion. Speculation, unsubstantiated fears of the community, or vague assertions do not constitute substantial evidence. Quasi-judicial hearings are constrained by the standards in the ordinance and the facts presented. Even though the board may hear other evidence, if it is not objected to, the board should rely on competent material and substantial evidence in the decision-making. The board will recognize the applicant as a party as well as the property owners, if different than the applicant. So at this time, is there anyone here who has standing? So I have staff here. Is the property owner here? The property owner is here? Okay, I will call you up in a second. And the applicant, and you are the applicant, thank you. Are there other persons who believe they have standing to participate fully as a party? If so, come forward at this time. I think, let me see here. However, if you do wish to participate as a party, please wait to come up until after we've identified parties with standing. I'm sorry, it does not say that. However, if you do not wish to participate as a party, please wait. Sorry, there was a little typo here. So, do you believe you have standing? Okay. Go ahead and come right on up here for the time being. And what I need from each of you is to come forward at the microphone and briefly introduce yourself and your address and briefly state the reasons why you believe you have standing. Oh, you don't have to because you are the applicant, yes. So, sir, if you believe you have standing, introduce yourself with your name and address and then briefly give us why you think you have standing.
I'm Daniel Austin, 5730 Jim Kidd Road, and I'm actually the only adjacent property owner. I have 4.08 acres that is on the west and north line of the project, and I believe it substantially affects my property, and I particularly want to talk about the buffer.
Do you have an expert here to talk?
I don't.
You do not?
I've just got the plans, and staff has provided some information.
And repeat for me one more time why you said you believe you had standing?
I believe it'll affect number one, it'll affect my property value. It's the primary. The other is the visual aspects of it.
So in order to discuss property value, you would have to have an expert here.
Okay. And the reason I didn't get an expert, because I believe there's a public, what's the name, public necessity clause in this that says that they don't have to prove to me that my property will be affected because of that clause. So I didn't think an expert witness would be relevant. Okay.
Yes,
If I can clarify.
please.
So there's specific criteria to solar, well, for special use permits. And it is, you can't adversely affect someone's property unless it is a public necessity. And so what is going to be testimony presented that in order for them to operate the solar farm, they will have to get a state certificate of public necessity, which negated the property value issue. This property owner does want to talk about buffers. We can show you specifically the language that we're talking about when we do our presentation.
So as a point of clarification, the standing issue is distinct from whether or not the ordinance requirements are met. And the standing issue is a preliminary threshold matter that has to be established. Sir, if you feel that you are trying to prove special damages in order to show that you have standing and those special damages are related to your property values, you would have to have an expert witness to be able to establish the effect on your property value. If you feel that you have standing in another way, we're happy to hear testimony in that regard.
The effect of the visual effect from my property to the solar farm is not considered standing?
No, sir, it's not. If it's something that is going to be something that the general citizenry as a whole would experience, which the visual effect would be, that's not specific to you in regards to being a special damage.
Public necessity.
Correct, and that's what I was getting ready to say. So, sir, what I can do is we can hear you as a non-party. So we will just stay right here because we'll have to still get you sworn in. Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, would you repeat for me your name again? I did not write it down. Austin? Yes. Thank you, sir. Oh, I have it right here. Daniel Austin. And so, Mr. Austin, you, like I said earlier, you do not have standing. However, we will swear you in as a non-party participant. Okay, thank you. Now let me find where I was in these pages. We have identified this. All right, here we are. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to swear them all in now. So I believe yes, please, and if you wouldn't mind bringing it over here. And you can either swear or affirm. You as well. Thank you. And let me hold that. And we'll do right hand up, left hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Now, it is the policy of this board. Oh, wait a minute, I almost lost of it. Here we are. The parties to this case are entitled to an impartial board. A board member may not participate in this hearing if she or he has a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close relationship with an affected person. Does any board member have any conflicts of interest to offer at tonight's meeting? Commissioner Phillips.
Madam Mayor, I would like to be recused. I am the executive director of an adjoining property and also friends with Mr. Austin.
Would you like the motion? Sorry. I'd like to make a motion to recuse Commissioner Phillips due to proximity to the item being discussed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. It is the policy of this board that a recused member shall step down from the dais and be excused from the room. The board member may return for the next matter. Yes, you will bring her back. The parties to this case have rights for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Our ex parte communication is any communication about the case outside of the hearing. That may be email communications as well as conversations with parties, staff, or the general public. Does any board member have any ex parte communication to disclose? Seeing none. I'd like to call on planning staff for the presentation of their staff report.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Lauren Spate for staff for special use permit 23-01. It's a major solar energy facility on Jim Kidd Road. What you see is the zoning map that indicates where the parcel is located in which the project area will be developed. So it's not the entirety of this site. The site is almost 200 acres. It's just a portion of this site. And as you can see, the parcel that the project will take place within and the surrounding parcels are within the rural zoning district. And major solar energy facilities are permitted in the rural zoning district with the issuance of a special use permit. And that's the project area there approximately. So, as Mr. Semino was mentioning, special use permits have general criteria that are outlined in Article 11 of the zoning ordinance that apply to any use that requires a special use permit. And then there are specific criteria that may be applied for individual uses. So for a major solar energy facility, there are specific requirements that are outlined in Article 9.54 of the zoning ordinance. What you'll see and what you saw in the staff report were the findings that were presented by the applicant in response to the general criteria, as well as some additional findings by staff. And then you'll also see responses that were included in the staff report with regard to the specific criteria. So some of the general criteria, one of which was just mentioned, is that the project, the proposed special use would not substantially injure the value of an abutting property, or it constitutes a public necessity. And one of the pieces of evidence that the applicant included was that they will have to get the certificate of public necessity from the state of North Carolina to even build the energy facility. So they are using that to meet they're using that evidence to meet this requirement. They also indicate that the use will be in harmony with the area in which it's located, in general conformity with the comprehensive plan and any applicable small area plan. So the project is within the boundaries of the Beatties Ford Small Area Plan, and it is consistent with that area, as well as the comprehensive plan with the specific criteria that are outlined in the staff report. So what you'll see here is the most recent site plan that was presented by the applicant. It is kind of zoomed in on the project area. The area with the kind of blue stripes are the proposed panels that will be that are proposed to be built on the parcel. And then it also shows the red hatched area is the drive that will be accessed for maintenance. Portion of the drive will be constructed with gravel, and then the remainder of the drive will not have any impervious area built upon. One of the items that staff presented to the applicant when we first received the application, the site, see if I can show it. It was originally proposed in this general area here, but there's a large amount of hardwood trees that are mature in this area, so the applicant shifted the site back to some newer growth pines that are in the rear here to better protect the existing mature canopy that's in the area. The applicant is also meeting the minimum 10-foot vegetative buffer that's along the shared property line with this interior lot here. This interior lot has its own access easement as well out to Jim Kidd Road. What you'll also see around the perimeter of the project area is the outline of a fence that is proposed around the solar panels. The fence will include danger, high voltage signs for anyone who may be in the area to warn them of potential danger in the area, and also includes, which is a little difficult to see here on this screen, but should be more clear in the staff report, the typical, which is at the bottom, that it demonstrates that the proposed height is 7.9 feet, and the maximum height that solar panel is allowed to be is 8 feet in height. Just for some context, staff has included this map for your consideration, just to give you a better idea of what is going on in the general vicinity. So the project area is approximately located here, and the lime green outline is the boundary of the entire parcel. So you'll see that a significant majority of the parcel will be remaining, even if this project is developed on site. The shaded parcels are properties that are publicly owned. So this kind of lime green color here are parcels that are owned by the city of Charlotte, and then this, what appears to be like a gray color, these are owned by Mecklenburg County, and then Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools here. The remaining parcels are privately owned. Staff's recommendation in considering the special use permit SUP 23-01 McDowell Creek WWTP solar planning, staff find the request meets all required conditions and specifications, is reasonable and does not pose an injurious effect on adjoining properties, and finds that the character of the neighborhood or the health, safety, and general welfare of the community will be minimized. This decision is supported by the findings of fact on pages 2 to 3 of the staff report. And that is all that we have with the staff presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Commissioner Kidwell.
Yes, if you could go back a few slides to the map. The property that's to the right, or I guess the east, can I ask, Mr. Austin, is that your property? Yes. All right, so you have property smack dab in the middle of this.
Yeah, the city calls me the donut hole.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm the adjacent property.
Okay. So you're across the street and you own that property?
Not across the street, it's just a gravel drive that accesses my property.
Okay. So,
We're all on the same side of Jim Kidd.
Yeah, I will need you to come up and speak into the microphone. Are there any other questions for staff? I mean, we'll go in order.
yeah, I'm not quite done. If you can go back to, you said about the states or certificate. Can you bring that verbiage back up for me, please? Thank you. Okay. Abutting. And, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Commissioner Partee?
Yes, I want to follow up on what Commissioner Kidwell is referring to. That's the certificate of public convenience and necessity required by the state of North Carolina. Isn't this like putting the cart before the horse? Because they would need this certificate in order to build. So therefore, would approval be, upon considering approval, should we include that in our decision-making process?
I'm not sure that I'm following the question, Commissioner Partee. As to the ordinance requirements, one of the general requirements for this specific type of special use permit is that it would not materially endanger the public health or safety, or, I'm sorry, the value of the abutting property, or it constitutes a public necessity. Now, the burden is on the applicant to show that this requirement is satisfied and that what they are proposing does constitute a public necessity.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Munger?
you're going to catch the Jackie Huffman and me seeing numbers off makes me twitch. If you go back to the very first slide, I believe, that one. Yeah, total parcel size, 194.4. If I go into staff findings, total area of the parcel to include the solar energy facility is 196.017. Not that it's going to make a whole lot of difference, but numbers don't match.
Staff has made comments about the difference in the numbers for the applicant to correct in a future site plan submittal. We noted it as a minor correction because they were going to meet for the project size, because the project size minimum is 10 acres.
Yeah.
We indicated that they just need to clarify that because they're still meeting the minimum requirement for the use.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for staff? Commissioner Boone?
Thank you. A couple quick questions. You said the solar panels' height is 7 to 7.5 feet.
No, sir.
How tall are the solar panels?
7.9 feet.
Okay, that's almost 8 feet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and how tall is the fence around it, the security fence?
The fence is proposed to be 7 feet in height.
Okay, can you describe what the fence was going to look like?
I cannot, but the applicant is here and they may be able to describe what the
Okay.
fence will look like.
Then I'll hold that question till later. Thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any other questions for staff? We'll now turn our questions to the applicant. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Kidwell? Okay. Commissioner Boone, you had it.
Right, to follow up on the question, how tall would the security fence be?
Typical utility fence be 6 foot tall with 3 strands of barbed wire across it, within the buffer outside of that. Typically, the buffer's outside of it for protection purposes.
And what's the life of the solar panels?
35 years is what these projects are projected to.
Okay, what happens in 35 years to this property?
35 years, this project, typically what we see is the value of the materials is worth more than just leaving it there, so it's recycled at that point. So that's what we're seeing right now with most of the studies.
Can somebody build a home on this solar farm after you leave?
Yes.
Okay, there's no,
No damage, other than we just need to remove that material at the time. Yes, sir.
okay, thank you, sir.
Commissioner Kovacs?
Why did you choose that? I understand you moved it from a previous site, but why around the donut hole?
The best reason I can give is that we were looking for an area where we could do a minimum damage to the trees on the property that were there. This area is, I was trying to think of a proper term that was technical, but it's basically scrub pines for the most part. So it's smaller trees in nature. It's something, we've been working very closely with the city of Charlotte and Charlotte-Mecklenburg Utility Department on trying to find a location that was less intrusive for purposes of building a renewable project.
And there's nowhere else on this site that would be,
None that we can find that have less impact, and that's what we were looking for, was something with less impact from.
less impact on trees?
Less impact on the natural resources that are there, yes.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Yeah, thank you for being here tonight. This is for the wastewater treatment plant?
It's associated with the wastewater treatment plant, yes, sir.
So is the electricity going to the wastewater treatment plant, or is it being subverted elsewhere?
This project actually is being built in conjunction with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Utility Department and Energy United, who's the utility provider there. Electricity will be sold as required by the CPCN, the public necessity requirement. At this point, to the utility, Energy United will buy the electricity. Renewable projects generate renewable energy certificates, renewable energy credits, and Charlotte-Mecklenburg Utility will receive those credits. That is part of the discussion. So they have environmental ESG goals that they're trying to meet, so this is part of meeting.
And thank you for that, but it's not to power the treatment plant?
No, not directly, no, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Commissioner Partee?
Can you briefly describe who is Petra Development LLC? And do you have other solar farms in and around the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area or in the country?
Yeah, great question. Petra Development is located in the business park right behind Joe Gibbs Racing, 11330 Van Story Drive. We're the largest user of the facility there at the Huntersville Business Park facility. Been there since 2016. Built projects all over the southeast as well as the northeast and Oregon, and as well as have developments in Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and other facilities. We're associated, we not only develop projects, but we also build those projects, we'll operate this project, and then along with a sister company, own this project.
Commissioner Munger.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions. Total area of this parcel is 190-plus acres, of which 10.7 is being set aside for the solar energy facility. Is this a phased approach, or what are you planning on doing with the additional acreage?
Well, this is all Charlotte Mecklenburg land, so we're essentially leasing a parcel, and this is typical to a project for us. Whether it's here or in a rural area in eastern North Carolina, for example, we're not going to lease the whole parcel. We'll simply lease the site that fits with what we're building from a generation standpoint.
So the intention is not an additional phase?
No.
Okay. Second question, I'm assuming, given your background, you probably are somewhat familiar with this. I know in California at the Ivanpah Solar Power Facility, a number of birds have been killed by the solar panels. Do we have any concerns about that happening here?
I have not seen that. My background is a licensed professional engineer working with projects over the last 20 years here and started in the bioenergy sector, now in solar. And we haven't seen that in the southeast. We haven't seen, we've had to move turtles, we've had to move snails, and we've had to do other things like that from an endangered species, but this particular project doesn't have any of those type attributes to it.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kovacs.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. In here, it says the applicant states the site would not be visible from any adjacent parcels or from any angle other than aerial, but it's almost 8 foot tall, and the fence is going to be 6 feet, but is it a chain link?
It's 7 feet by the time you get through adding. This parcel in particular, one of the things we chose because of the topography of the site, we expect that there's a pretty significant buffer on most of the areas already from hardwood trees, if you look at some of the maps, the drawings that are there. So we're expecting that it will not be seen except from above. We've run the topography, looked at the topography, and with a buffer area in place, we expect that you won't be able to see it.
Commissioner Kidwell.
And this is for the board to consider. You know, two things. It's supposed to be, well, the state certificate not being approved. I think that's what Commissioner Partee was getting at. We're approving something before they have the state's write-off on it. That's kind of in my craw. The other one is, you know, is it in harmony with the area? And while it might fit a node, there's a school down at one end. There is a historical property at the other end and rural farmland all around. And while Mecklenburg County does own this 194.4 plus or minus acres, it is right next to, adjacent to a property owner's property. And if I'm looking at all the specifics of how this will be built, you know, with a 8-foot solar panel, a 7-foot fence with barbed wire, whether you can build a house on it or not, you're gonna be able to see it through that brush. And that's what that is brush, and that's what I'm hearing, is it's easy to build there because it's not hardwood trees and it's brush, easy to take down brush. And if there's property right next to it with brush, you're gonna be able to see it. So I think that's something to consider. And can you take it back on the proposal? Just go back to the state. Yeah. Does it constitute a public necessity? I question that. I don't know if this solar panel, because it's not feeding directly into wastewater treatment. It's not, it's being sold to a co-op, to Energy United, to sell to their end users. And as a member of Energy United, I mean, I do buy solar from them. So I would be buying solar potentially from this plant, or it could be elsewhere. I don't think that this is a necessity. Energy United's a big company. They can contract to have solar panels built anywhere around Mecklenburg County or the state to gain that energy to resell. So I don't think, personal opinion, it's not meeting the general requirements for me on this. Just my-
Commissioner Kovacs?
Can I ask Ms. Sloop a question?
Yes.
What is the definition of reasonable?
So reasonable in this situation would be defined as it is in the dictionary.
Thank you.
Commissioner Munger?
On the setback, your 20-foot setback from property line, I'm getting a nod in the negative behind you. I just want to make sure. Is the first solar panel 20 foot behind the property line?
So, no. So
Okay.
the way that it's a few different rules here with where the
Because I swear I just saw it said 20 feet.
Sorry, do you mind if I?
No, you go ahead.
So one is that the site has to be consistent with the setbacks of the zone, of the underlying zoning district, which is a rural zoning district. And they will be with those. The side yard setbacks for the rural zoning district are 8 feet, because I think we're particularly concerned about the side yard in this case here. The use also has a buffer requirement from Article 7. And Article 7, typically the buffer would be a little bit wider. However, for non-commercial uses, for commercial uses in the rural zoning district, the use is allowed to have a minimum 10-foot buffer along the side yard. So there's the minimum 8 feet that you have to have, which is a setback, and then there's a 10-foot opaque vegetative buffer that is required here. Now, there are some existing trees.
Did you say opaque? Just,
Opaque.
thank you.
And the applicant would be required by the minimum standards of the ordinance to supplant the existing vegetation if it is not, if it's not opaque.
Okay.
So, and there's obviously.
By
that is a
opaque, I
minimum.
mean essentially non-deciduous trees, something that you can't see through it, period. I
Evergreen.
just want to throw it out
Yeah,
there.
There's a typical section that's.
Yeah, quick question for the applicant. Would you be open to changing that to 20 feet?
I think there's space there, yes. And so certainly we're open to the direction as given for making sure we have the proper space. One of the things we want to go into every project with is with the neighbors satisfied and with the community
Right.
satisfied. So we're very open to those discussions, yes.
General question to the gentleman who may or may not have standing. Would that be somewhat more appealing if it had a 20-foot barrier and it was of opaque?
If it's opaque, so
Yes.
the clause, I mean, the article 7.5.3 allows some existing vegetation, but the existing vegetation won't provide that.
Absolutely. So he would have to put, the applicant would have to put in something that would make it opaque and
Right, so
to the point where you wouldn't really be able to see it from your property.
Correct. And another point, if I may, is, can you pull up this full site plan? The whole tract. So, does this work? Okay, great. So the whole tract was, this was my grandparents' farm. And there are some hardwoods over here that's close to the creek that feeds into the river. There are hardwoods right here, but there's maybe 100-some acres of 10, 12, 15-year-old pines that the city planted, so they're not hardwoods. None of, most of it is in relatively new pine growth, which will eventually be harvested. And so my problem is if the buffer, if I can't, if you got an 8-foot fence and the buffer doesn't block it, then what happens? I just
Right.
see solar panels.
So,
And the site is almost 200 acres, and they picked 10 acres right beside me.
Yeah.
and these aren't hardwoods.
I do understand where you're coming from. I hope you understand. I'm trying to look for
I understand
some
that.
form of compromise.
Right.
And I'm sure they've gone through an extensive study for where it works. And for them, this is probably where it works best. But
I understand.
to try and make it so it's less of an impact on you,
Therefore, my main topic is the buffer.
right? So, and the applicant has agreed that they would do a 20-foot buffer and it would be opaque in nature. And I think this is a fair compromise, so
And
up to 20 feet.
may I read the rest? The option of, the buffer was reduced to 10 feet. Now, if evergreen shrubs are used a minimum of 8 foot at maturity and complete visual buffer. So what's going to be planted and how it will be maintained? If you've got evergreens that get bagworms, they're gone, their leaves are gone, they die, will they be replanted? Is there, will it be continuous buffer for the?
I'm getting a nod from staff that indicates it would be a requirement that they maintain said opaque buffer.
Lauren, would you like to speak to that?
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
If the required plantings are diseased or they die, they would be required to be replanted.
All right, are there any other questions? Go back to my list to make sure I'm doing this right. Does the board have any more questions for the parties or witnesses before we move into deliberation? And that answer is no. Hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the board will now begin deliberation. The evidentiary hearing remains open so that the board may ask clarifying questions if needed. As a reminder, this board is tasked with deciding if, based on competent, material, substantial evidence presented at the hearing before this board, this proposal meets the applicable standards. If the applicant meets their burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will be met, the burden shifts to the other parties opposing the application to show by competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will not be met. If conflicting evidence as to a standard is presented, the board will weigh the evidence and determine which side's evidence is more credible and more reliable. The application as originally submitted was considered by the planning board, and the planning board made a recommendation. Nothing that occurred at the planning board level, including the planning board's recommendation, is considered evidence that you can base your decision on. However, the planning board's recommendation may be used to the board's, to the board in identifying issues that this board may want to consider and evaluate based upon the evidence that was presented at the hearing before this board. Now, is there any discussion? Is there a motion? Commissioner Boone?
Commissioner Munger, if you kind of listen to the end of this, I'd appreciate it. Motion to approve the special use permit, SUP 23-01, McDowell Creek WWTP Solar. In considering the request, we, the town board, find the request meets all the required criteria for granting the special use permit for a major solar energy facility in a rural zoning district, as outlined in the zoning ordinance and is supported by staff's finding of facts on page 2 of 3 of the staff report, which are incorporated herein. In addition, the applicant will have a minimum 20-foot buffer around the facility and maintain through the life of this facility the OPEC buffer.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, there is a motion and there is a second. All those in favor? And those opposed? So, special use permit, there needs to be a supermajority vote, so not, no, because we had to recuse one, I apologize. We need 4 votes. So is there any additional discussion, or is there another motion?
Is there anything specific that could sway board members into voting for this or being in favor of this? I absolutely heard what was said, and I had definitely took the adjacent neighbor, his concerns into consideration. I believe I looked for a middle ground, and I mean, solar energy is a sensible decision. It makes great sense, especially in an area that is essentially rural. No one's living in that area other than this gentleman, and I believe we've addressed some of his main concerns. So, you know, it's one thing I try and stress, and I say from the beginning, find the path to yes and ask for it. In this case, I found the path to yes, and I asked for a specific consideration. I'd like you to do the same.
Mr. Munger, I appreciate you doing that. However, as I stated earlier, it's not in harmony, what they're asking for. It's not in, just because it's rural doesn't mean we go and tear up the ground and plant and put in solar farms. You know, and to the point where the adjacent landowner said, they got all that other land to use, and they put it right up on his. Now, I have a unprofessional opinion on that, is because it's close to the road and they don't have to draw the lines so far out or whatever they got to do. But also, it goes back to that this is being put in to sell electricity. It's not, you know, like it's going to be putting all of that in for the water treatment center. It's not going to be being delivered to the homes in the area to reduce their electric bill. It is being sold by a company. And that, to me, does not make sense. It does not meet the requirements that they're asking for. You know, I also go back to Section 2 and 3 of the state certificate, which they don't have, and it doesn't meet that either. I appreciate both the applicant and the neighbor saying they'll meet it, but it's up here, it does not meet that. And we have, as a board, had plans come before us in the past that may or may not have been in a specific node or a specific area plan and said no. No, we don't think it's going to be the right thing for that area plan, even though it matched it. So it's not out of context for a board member here to disagree on voting.
Commissioner Kovacs?
I appreciate you, Commissioner Munger, with trying to find the path to yes and the 20-foot buffer. Honestly, I was stuck on the definition of reasonable, and it says appropriate, fair, and sensible. And to me, it is not sensible to put it where the only people live when you have the entire property. It just doesn't seem like a rational decision.
So in order to, in a quasi-judicial hearing, you have to make your decisions based off of the evidence. And I need to hear what evidence are you saying does not meet? Because staff is saying it's meeting these.
It's not in harmony with the area.
So it says the
Actually,
proposed special use will not substantially injure the value of abutting property, or it constitutes a public necessity. So are you saying you don't believe it's a public necessity?
I do not believe it's a public necessity at that location, no. I didn't bring anything up about property value in anything I've said.
Right. I'm agreeing. I was reading the or. Anything else from anyone? Other questions for the applicant? I mean, Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for the applicant. Could you go into a little more detail on the information and the permitting that you have to get from the state? And why didn't you do that first versus waiting for the zoning? Could you?
The application has been made to the state. PUC provides that public necessity. They make the decision on whether necessity and need is made. That's under state law. So this goes through a regular process with them, staff recommendation, and then they'll review, and then they'll actually make that decision at the staff level. So they're gonna make sure all the information they have is whole. They're gonna confirm that information. There'll be some back and forth with those questions, but it's under state law that we're meeting the public necessity.
Is there any other time that you've gotten the state permit before you came to the town board for a rezoning?
Typically, they go hand in hand, like here, where you're making the application for both the public necessity and need. And in some cases, and I'm not jumping the witness here, but we've had to prove that we have that necessity of need post the approval for the actual approval to be validated. So. Yes.
Commissioner Partee?
Have you ever been denied a certificate of need by the state of North Carolina for any of your facilities?
We've been involved with projects that have not met the environmental requirements or have had problems with their ability to satisfy that requirement. Under the state guidance for certificates of public necessity and need, it has to be a project that feeds into the grid, that is between 2 megawatts and 80 megawatts AC for the purpose of general consumption by the public through either a co-op, a municipality, or an investor-owned utility.
Lauren, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we please go back to the required findings as far as the ordinance requirements, both the general and specific, so that we can go back over those? I think there may be some confusion in terms of what the applicable criteria are that need to be satisfied. Just run back through, please, the specific requirements of 9.54 and also the general requirements of our ordinance, please.
Okay. So there are general requirements for any special use permit, and then there are specific criteria for just major solar energy facilities. So the general requirements are on the left here, and the first is that this proposed special use will not materially endanger public health or safety. The second is that it will not substantially injure the value of a budding property or it constitutes a public necessity. The third is that it would be in harmony with.
Just to go back to that one, so we said "or" there. That means that it has to satisfy one or the other. I just want to make that clear on the record, and you can proceed with the rest. Thank you.
Yes. The third is that the proposed special use will be in harmony with the area in which it is located and in general conformity with the comprehensive plan and any applicable small area plan. Of course, it's up to this board to determine whether or not they agree with staff findings and the applicant's responses. With this one as well, there are a few things that were considered when staff analyzed the application. One were the uses that are permitted in the rural zoning district, and this is an existing permitted use. It just carries with it the requirement that a special use permit be granted by the town board. The second thing that staff considered was the comprehensive plan, which of course is the long-range plan that's adopted to guide the development in the town, and this is consistent with the proposed long-range uses for the rural zoning district here. One of the things that we considered with that, there are several requirements to do with the preservation of existing vegetation that we considered with this use, because such a small area of the parcel is being, which I understand their concerns about the location of where it is, but because of the small scale of the project with regard to the large size of the parent parcel, staff found that they were preserving the majority of the existing vegetation to be in line with the guidance of the comprehensive plan with preservation of existing canopy. The small area plan, as mentioned, there's the Beatty's Ford Small Area Plan, which does call out future uses for some areas. It does not indicate any specific future use for the general vicinity of the area that's proposed for the solar project. The next criteria is this proposed special use will comply with all lot, size, yard, and other standards in which this ordinance applies to all uses permitted in the zoning district in which the property is located. So as mentioned, There are the base setback requirements that they are specific to single-family detached homes, but that is one of the primary uses in the rural zoning district. They're relatively small in consideration to the scale of this type of project. The project is meeting those setbacks. And then there are additional requirements with regard to the buffers that are required for a commercial use in a residential zoning district. And they were proposing to meet the minimum 10 feet, and as acquiesced by the applicant, to find a middle ground with the adjoining property owner. It's being increased to 20 feet there, or proposed to be increased to 20 feet. And that this proposed special use will comply with all general and specific standards as required by the appropriate section, which is Article 9.54. There are very few criteria on the right, well, it's my right side of the screen here for major solar energy facilities. The first is that the project area, the minimum lot size is 10 acres. So the parent parcel is almost 200 acres. The project area is a little over 10 acres. And as mentioned by Commissioner Munger, there's minor discrepancies with the actual acreage that's listed. Staff has made comments about that. Then the setbacks meet the minimum for the underlying zoning district, which is also in the general criteria, and that it be a minimum of 20 feet from any property line in the SP zoning district. This is not in the special purpose zoning district. And then the last is that the facilities are a maximum of 8 feet in height. Applicant is proposing a facility that's 7.9 feet in height as measured from the grade at the base of the structure. And then they also have to include an existing features plan, which they included in their submittal package as well.
So it sounds to me like they've met all of the criteria, not only for the special use permit, but for the specific to solar facilities as well. Is that your assessment?
Based on the responses from the applicant and staff's further analysis of the criteria, staff's conclusion is that the criteria are met.
Thank you.
Also, I would like to add one point of clarification. The requirements, both general and specific, they are in front of you, so anything else that's in the packet would not be considered a requirement. So Part 4, for example, that's some language that staff had added into the agenda package, but a reasonableness statement is not required for a special use permit. That is required for a rezoning. So I don't want to confuse that with an actual requirement.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
All right, I just want to add one other thing, which I believe, and Commissioner Partee may correct me if I'm mistaken. I believe it was asked earlier with regard to the certificate of public necessity, whether or not that can be conditioned with the special use permit. And my understanding is that it is allowed for the town board to place conditions upon the approval of a special use permit.
So the board could make, if there was a motion, the board could make a requirement that that certificate be received.
That is correct.
Okay. Commissioner Boone, I apologize to you earlier. I didn't realize you had another question, and I want to make sure I go back to you.
Okay, I have one question. I have another motion. This is for the applicant. If this board approves your request and the state turns it down, saying that there is no need for this, the project is over, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes. Oh.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion. It's the same motion I had as before, or do I have to read the whole thing
Please
again?
read it.
It wasn't written. Motion to approve the special use permit SUP 23-01 McDowell Creek WWTP Solar. In considering the request, we, the town board, find the request meets all of the required criteria for granting the special use permit for a major solar energy facility in a rural zoning district as outlined in the zoning ordinance and is supported by staff's finding of facts on page 2 and 3 of the staff report, which are incorporated herein. In addition to that, a minimum 20-foot buffer will be maintained by the applicant, and the buffer will be oblique. Opaque, oh geez. I'm 2 steps ahead of me. The second condition is that this motion is subject to the state approval of your necessity of need certificate. Emily, excuse me, Ms. Sloop, is that legal?
Yes, correct, as long as that is the correct name of the permit that is required, Lauren.
Yeah, it's in the staff report.
Certificate of public convenience and necessity.
All right, there's a motion and there is a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 4-1.
I could make a motion, or you're going?
Staff will draft, and I will sign a final written decision to reflect the vote and the reasoning for this decision. I would like to thank everyone attending this hearing today, and we welcome you to stay for the other items. If you are leaving, please do so quietly at this time. Thank you. Commissioner Boone?
Motion to bring back Commissioner Phillips.
Second.
There's a motion to bring back Commissioner Phillips. There is a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, Commissioner Phillips is coming back to the dais. We'll give her a moment to do so. Lauren? Oh, thank you. Thank you. We're now going to go ahead and move to item, I don't know if this is 10C or 10D. Consider a decision on petition TA 22-11. This is a request by the Huntersville Planning Department for a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to amend Article 10, signs, to increase flexibility in sign regulations and codify current practices. Ms. Spate?
So,
Spate?
Speak.
I do it all the time.
So I'd like to enter the staff report into the record. I'm not going to review this in detail, just kind of give the high-level overview. So the purpose of this text amendment, as indicated, is to increase flexibility with the sign regulations based on customer feedback, and to clarify existing regulations and codify current practices of the department. And I'll take any questions that anyone may have at this time.
Well, is there a motion at this point? Commissioner Munger?
Thank you, Mayor. Considering the proposed amendment TA 22-11, Town Board recommends approval based on the amendment being consistent with policy LU8 of the Huntersville 24 Community Plan, with the exception of Section 9. It is reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because it will clarify the current language and increase the flexibility of the sign regulations while still meeting the intent of signs being for identification purposes and not for advertising.
There's a motion, there's a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move to the next item on the agenda. This is to consider a decision on petition TA 23-02, a request by the Huntersville Planning Department for a text amendment to the zoning ordinance to amend Article 14.2.3 of the zoning ordinance. Ms. Spate?
So I'd like to enter the staff report for TA 23-02 into the record, and there's one item that I do want to go over. So this is a text amendment in 6 parts, not 4 parts. There are 2 sections that are revised with TIA reference, 2 for withdrawal of application amendments, and 2 with required mailings for sketch and amendments. And the one that I want to call into your attention is with regard to the withdrawal of applications. So this is in response to a question that staff received during the planning board meeting in conversation with legal department. So there was a question about the timing of resubmittal of applications that are denied and that are withdrawn, and the language had previously just addressed applications that were denied. And so the highlighted text is a change since the planning board meeting to include specifications for the withdrawal of applications to be consistent with the reapplication of denied applications. So it's a year, whether it's denied or withdrawn. I'll take any questions.
Is there a motion? Commissioner Munger?
Yeah, Ms. Lu, watch me on this one. I want to make sure I got that last part in there. In considering the proposed amendment TA 23-02, the town board recommends approval based on the amendment being consistent with policies LU 1.1 and T 6.6 of the Huntersville 2040 Community Plan. It is reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because the amendment will remove references no longer applicable, provide community members more opportunities for input in public processes, and allow petitions for amendments to be withdrawn at any time for final action.
There's a motion. Is there, are you?
I just want to make sure I covered that portion. Yep, thanks, bye.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Kidwell, is there discussion? Commissioner Kidwell?
Yes, in this long body of words, community meeting notification, section 5 and 6, I want to thank staff for altering that for certified mail. We often do hear from neighborhood meetings, well, I wasn't aware, I didn't know. I live in the sphere of influence and I wasn't contacted or anything like that, so I think this is a step in the right direction. I know it's more costly to the town and or the applicant, but this is a positive thing in my opinion.
Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to say, echo the same thing Rob just said. I think that this is a step in the right direction by going to registered mail. The other thing is, as far as when the year starts of a withdrawal of an applicant or a denial, when does the clock start? The day of the vote from the board, or is it, in a case of withdrawal, is it the date on the withdrawal notice?
So yes, so if the application is denied, then the clock will start from the date of the denial. And if the application is withdrawn, the additional language is indicating that it is 1 year from the date the petition was withdrawn.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments, questions? All right, there's a motion and there is a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we will move to the next item on our agenda. And this is consider adopting the proposed fiscal year 24 electric rate changes. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you. How are you? Good evening.
Good
Madam Mayor,
evening.
Commissioners. David Lucor, Electric Systems Manager for Electric Cities. Presented for your consideration the proposed FY24 electric rate changes. There are very few changes in total, but I have outlined them. With the industrial on-peak rate has the most significant change, and that's a 2% increase, and also an increase in the basic charge. The renewable energy portfolio standards have changed slightly. They've actually been reduced just a little bit, and the renewable energy credit rate rider, that kilowatt hour charge or credit actually has increased slightly. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Is there a motion on the floor? Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Motion to approve the proposed fiscal year 24 electric rate changes.
Motion, is there a second? I'm sorry, was that Commissioner Kovacs? Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LaCour. I'll see you soon. Next item on the agenda is 10G, and that is the Law Enforcement Services Interlocal Agreement. Ms. Huffman?
Hello, good evening. I don't really have a presentation. Our current policing the ETJ agreement with Mecklenburg County ends at the end of this fiscal year. The county proposes to renew for a 3-year term. That will align their agreements up with the other agreements they have on policing the ETJ, and they propose renewing at the consistent $1.4 million rate that we've been receiving each of the last 5 fiscal years.
Is there a motion on the floor? Commissioner Partee?
Thank you. Motion to authorize town manager to sign 4-year renewal of the Law Enforcement Services interlocal agreement between Mecklenburg County and the town of Huntersville.
And there's a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Munger?
Jackie, you mentioned this is a $1.4 million per year that we're getting paid to police the ETJ, and that's what we've been paid in previous years. Why no increase based on, basic inflation rates, anything like that? Was that not a point of negotiation for us?
We asked for an increase. The county has a cost per call ratio that they held firm with.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Just to be clear, the county could have actually told us that they were taking this away if they wanted to, couldn't they?
I'm satisfied they could have chosen somebody else to police the ETJ. My understanding before we did it, CMPD did.
Prior it was, CMPD was doing it for the sheriff's office. I was around when we first brought this under umbrella. So, the county, I agree with Commissioner Munger. It is unfortunate that they did not increase it. I'm just glad that they kept it with HPD.
I apologize. I just want to quickly comment. I do agree with you that it should be under HPD, but our officers in our town should be adequately compensated.
Commissioner Partee?
Just to my fellow commissioners, I had this conversation with Ms. Hoffman, and moving forward, we're going to sit down with the town manager and come up with a plan moving as far as increasing the fees as the ETJ starts to grow, and we're monitoring it and servicing it. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. We'll now move to item, I guess this 10I. This is the 2023 GEO bond resolution directing publication of notice of intention to apply for the Local Government Commission for approval of bonds. Mr. Roberts.
Thought about letting Jackie do it. I know she's more passionate on it. So 2 items that are coming up that's related to the bond. The first one, as you said, I forgot the letter now, because, well, maybe it's I now, I guess it is. But the first one deals with the publication of the notice to intention that we apply through LGC for the bonds. And you'll see in language for both of them, we have in there the amount. It's $50 million for transportation related and $8 million for Parks and Rec. So 2 different bonds, 50 and 8. And you can, I wasn't going to read through the actual language. It should be in your package. But it allows for flexibility within both, pretty standard language. The bond counsel has looked at this. I can stop there, but the second one basically deals with the same item, same language, but this is a separate resolution that makes certain statements for the findings of fact related to both the transportation bond and the Park and Rec bond. 50 million transportation, 8 million Parks and Rec, and I'll stop there.
All right, so we will open it up for discussion, or is there a motion? Commissioner Boone?
Madam Mayor, I do have a motion for 10I. Motion to approve the resolution directing the publication of notice of intention to apply to the local government commissioner for the approval of the general obligation bonds.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Partee. We'll open it up for discussion. Any discussion? Commissioner Kidwell?
Yes, I tell you, at the retreat, or one of our work sessions, not a retreat, but we talked about where we're at, and I was at 45. Other commissioners were at 70. I think this is a good compromise to present to the people to vote for, and allow them their feelings on it come election time.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. We will now move to the next item, which is and make sure I'm saying this right, this is the 2023 GO Bond Resolution 2, certain statements of fact concerning proposed bond issue and authorizing the application to the local government commission. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like a motion to approve the resolution making certain statements of fact concerning the proposed general obligation bond insurance and authorizing the application to the local government commission for the approval of the general obligation bonds.
Second.
And there is a second. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Those opposed? And we now go to the last item on the agenda.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to recuse you from the last item on the agenda.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? I'll be back.
Here.
Commissioner Phillips, you've got this.
All right, so we are moving on to adopt second amendment to the Transportation Projects Capital Project Ordinance to transfer funds from Gibson Park Drive, Holbrook Street Extension, Walter Street, and David Kinney Farm Connection to the Ranson Road Widening Project, and Miss Patty McGinnis will be leading the way for staff.
You summed it up perfectly. So basically, this is a second amendment to the capital project ordinance and the bond fund, where we would like to move dollars from these from these projects to the Ranson Road to cover increased expenses we have on that for construction for increased expenses.
Do any of the board members have any questions or comments?
I do. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I brought this off of the consent agenda, and I think we need to tell the folks that live around these projects, what does this mean with the town taking, let's say, from Walter Street, $99,000 and put it into another project? What are we telling those folks that live on that street? Patty, you got it?
Got it? No. Even surprised.
So for, let's say, there's several projects listed, specifically for the Walters project. There's I believe it's approximately $99,000 of bond funds for that project. Total project cost on that, I think, is over $3 million. And it's also a project that is not programmed in the current CIP or in the draft CIP to start for many years. So the money would just be sitting there until such time the project gets started.
And
So we
that's
can-
all the money that's left in that's all the money that's left in that project.
Okay, so I'm sitting on Walter Street, and I had some hope that my street was going to get fixed. There's almost $100,000 in there for that project, and now the town has decided to take that to offset the additional costs of another road. Am I understanding that correct? When are the people at Walter Street going to see any improvements to their street?
That's part of the budget process, and the board would make that decision.
Thank you.
Let me expand a little further. So I think it's a $3.5 million project out in the future year. And so it's not just as simple as paving Walters or putting curb and gutter. There's some realignment stuff. So the majority of money, Kevin and Stephen may have to help me out here, because I don't have the picture in front of me, but it's more than just paving and curb and gutter right on that little section. It's a lot more complicated than that. That's where the majority of money would come from. But being that's in a future CIP, a board would need to advance that project forward. Most likely, the 99,000 was probably some funds set aside to do some maybe design, Stephen. I mean, that sounds reasonable to me.
That may fund a portion of the design work.
That would have been maybe it. So I'm not sure why 99,000 was there, but that,
Commissioner Kovacs?
That was weird. Specifically with, I know that some of these might have been done. Some of these other projects we're taking money from that's leftover money. So that makes absolute sense. I think it's unfortunate for people, because I believe, was Walters ever on the CIP to be funded? It was, correct? And then we took it off.
Well, we didn't take it off.
We just kept pushing it.
We moved it out because I guess the project wasn't ready or.
Yeah, it kept getting moved out. I think the Vermillion Village project kept getting moved out from the developer. But the town, say, as part of the budget process, it was decided that project, the year just kept changing. So we hadn't started on that project yet.
I think if we're going to take funding from this, we need to think about other ways that we could fund starting this, because we can't make residents wait on a project by a developer.
Which would be bonds.
Yes, well, I'm saying to my board, my fellow board members mostly, just we need to think about starting to fund things for actual smaller streets that people are using.
Yeah, and say that's a project that we haven't started on yet. The Ransom Road project, as you approved it earlier in the budget, is letting for construction. So that project's moving forward and at that stage versus the Walter Street project hasn't been started on yet. So using money towards a project that's well underway was the thought process on that one.
Understood.
Commissioner Boone?
Mr. Roberts, what happens if this second amendment to the Transportation Project Capital Program is denied? What happens then?
we will pull funds from somewhere else to pay for Ransom Road project. The Walter Street, I'll just pick on that one, the 99,000 will stay there. It'll do basically nothing for that project. The board decides to move it forward. 99,000 probably won't even design it. Because you got 3.5 million, or 3.4 million or some dollars that is not funded, is sitting out in a future year, so that's 2027-ish. So unless a board moves it forward. Yeah, it just sits there and we pay interest on it.
And David Kinney, Farm Connection, I believe we postponed that until 73, Highway 73 project was completed by DOT.
So yes, sir, what we did is, the board at that time said, we want to get it to this certain stage, stop it until after 73, and then bring it back. But based on 73, it could be 2 boards from now. So I don't know right, so I don't know if it's after it's completed, it's, who knows, 27, 28. I don't know if any of us would be sitting up here then. So that board at that time would probably have to make that decision.
And the Holbrook Street extension, can you comment on that?
I'm sorry, on the
Holbrook Street extension.
That piece is done over to the back of Aldi. And the same thing with Gibson Park Drive, that Phase 1 is done. We're working on Phase 2 now.
Yeah, both the Holbrook Street extension and the Gibson Park Drive Phase 1 projects are complete and have been complete. So no more additional expenses on those projects.
But if we pull this money out, then the planning will stop for the second stage?
No, sir.
That's a separate project.
Okay.
This is just money for the projects that have, for those 2 projects that are already complete, and it's sitting there and not planned to be spent on anything.
Commissioner Kidwell?
I just wanted to hear you say that. Stephen, the Walter Street project, it is currently not in the CIP, correct? So is that what I heard? It's in the future CIP? When you say future, where at? Where's it lie? What years?
Future years, so in the, yeah.
Post 28. And $100,000 in designing and building in a street project is a drop in the bucket. You can't even buy machinery for that. I appreciate Commissioner Boone and bringing this up and bringing the conversation. I think it's good to alert our neighbors and our citizens of what's going on in the area. But, I mean, if we're talking about $100,000 for a project that's, way down the line, I think we need to move forward with the Ranson Road project, and then this board, if it comes up again, or the next board, or the 2030 board, whenever that happens, can appropriate the necessary amount of money to complete that project for those folks.
Are there any more questions or comments? Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion.
We'll get to it.
Sure, I'll get right to it. I'd like to make a motion to approve and adopt the second amendment to the Transportation Projects Capital Project Ordinance to transfer funds from the Gibson Park Drive, Holbrook Street Extension, Walter Street, and Dave Kennedy Farm connection to the Ranson Road widening project.
Second.
All right, those four? Nobody's against, so that motion passes. Would you guys like to make a motion to bring the mayor back?
Only if you say my name out loud.
Commissioner Munger?
Thank you. Motion to bring back Mayor Bales.
All right, can we have a vote for a yes? Motion carries. Mayor Bales, please come back ASAP.
You didn't say my name.
Anthony Roberts, Commissioner Kingpin.
Well done, Commissioner Phillips. We're now moving to mayor and commissioner reports. We'll start with Commissioner Phillips and work our way down this evening.
No update at this time.
Commissioner Boone?
Yes, ma'am. The Huntersville Police Department is still having their T-shirt promotion. They are out of some sizes, so, excuse me, fire department, excuse me. The fire department is having their T-shirt promotion. They are out of some sizes. So if you're interested, I would suggest going to station number 1 to see if they've got your size. Thank you.
Commissioner Kovacs?
You don't have the RASP like Commissioner Phillips does. I have a report from the Lake Norman Chamber. Tomorrow on Tuesday, the Chamber will host a small business program virtually on cash flow. The financial workshop takes place from 2 to 3 p.m. and features Adam Boatsman with BGW. For Zoom credentials, please contact the Chamber. On Friday, also virtually, the Chamber will host Focus Friday, which features North Carolina Senator Jim Bergen, who chairs the Senate Healthcare Committee, and that's from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. Tuesday, May 23rd, the Chamber's diversity program will spotlight local Lake Norman businesses with Asian and Pacific Islander heritage when we host a panel discussion with John Chen, Chair of the Carolinas Asian Chamber of Commerce and Chair of the Asian Boat Festival, Vinay Patel, President and CEO of Sri Hotels, and Doug Kropelnicki, who co-owns A1 Vacuum Solutions, a retail store in Huntersville. It is both in person and Zoom at the Chamber, noon to 1:15. And don't miss the Chamber's 0K, All the Fun Without the Run on Tuesday, June 2nd at Lost Worlds Brewing. For more information, please visit the Chamber at lakenormanchamber.org.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. CRTPO is this Wednesday. Commissioner Boone is going to be there in my attendance. I have a work function I'm unable to get out of. Thank you.
Commissioner Partee?
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quick, just to remind folks out there that Saturday, May 20th, between 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., it's Pottstown Pickup Day, and you can volunteer, come on down and help that community. In addition to that, I always want to advocate for gun safety. As always, I will advocate for gun safety, especially in homes where guns are stored and children are present. Accidental and intentional discharges cause a serious physical injury and death. The Huntersville Police Department has free gun safety locks. Organizations and individuals can contact the police department, or they can contact me at dparthuntersville.org. Let's be child safe. Let's just be safe, period, when it comes to guns. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Munger?
Thank you, Mayor. On May 10th, 2023, the Public Art Commission met and discussed the status of our Peace Pole project. I have seen several of the poles that are already completed, and they look wonderful. We also discussed the upcoming Sculpture project, and I would like to take a moment to encourage any and all artists to please submit proposals to participate in this event as soon as possible. On May 25th, the Greenway Trail and Bikeway Commission will be hosting our second Wine on the Vine event at the trailhead across from the street from Town Hall from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And from what I understand, we only have 6 tickets left, so please hurry and don't be left out. And lastly, as always, if you have an opportunity to give, please consider supporting our local nonprofits. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And I have just a brief report. Wednesday morning, I am participating with the Charlotte MTC Working Group. We will be looking at transit and CATS. And then I also have the Affordable Housing Task Force with Commissioner Phillips that morning as well. I would like to say a huge thank you to Parks and Rec and staff for putting on a beautiful Hello Huntersville. Veterans Park was packed. It was a beautiful day. The wind was blowing, the sun was out, and families were out and just truly enjoying community, and that was a great thing to see. So, oh yeah, tripping over themselves. And my EDC report, currently, they are working a total of 39 projects. They do have one new project called Project Moody's. Some noteworthy things that happened this week was, of course, Governor Cooper was here with the Atom Power announcement, which was a great announcement for Huntersville. 200 and I think it's like 260 jobs, and the average salary is going to be $91,000 a year. I think that's a great win for our community. I would also like to put a plug in for the Pivot program. This is the Advanced Manufacturing Internship Program. It's a paid internship for students age 16 to 18. So if you know a student, the application process is going on right now. And we'll look forward to placing up to 21 high school students in an advanced manufacturing facility for, during the summer. So excited for that. And I think that is all I've got, other than to say, welcome to spring. It's finally sprung, and it's great to be out and about in Huntersville, in that North Carolina sky. Any comments? Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you. This was not related to my commissioner report, so I wanted to share this with you, but there's a young girl in our community named Ella Rose. She's 6 years old. She's fighting a disease called vanishing white matter. You might have seen in the local socials lately that, she had to go to the hospital. It was touch and go there for a bit, and she's back home. But this disease is constantly, it's taking its toll on her every day. And I happen to live down the street from her. She is, when she's out with her family, she's spirited, she's happy, she's what you think a 6-year-old little girl would be like, and it's just phenomenal to watch her. But there will be a fundraiser to help support her in her fight on June 3rd, between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. at Jack's Corner Tap in Cornelius. There'll be different things, silent auction, raffle, things like that. I would encourage the community to come out and support Ella and her family during that time, and keep them in your prayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Munger?
Hard to follow that one, but just wanted to throw a shout out to one of our new local businesses right down the street here from us. 760 Craftworks just opened up, if you haven't had the opportunity to go. it is fantastic, and it was a great thing to have that business put in there.
Anyone else? Is there a motion? Is there a second? All those in favor? Good night, Huntersville.